Hi boys and girls, we're going to talk about settings and fairy tales again today. The setting is the time and place and environment of a story. The time, when, the place, where, and the environment, what. The setting affects what happens in the story, characters react to the setting, and the characters and setting should fit together. We're going to read Cindy Ellen today, which is a fractured fairy tale from Cinderella. And we're going to notice and observe the setting in Cindy Ellen. A wild western Cinderella. Here we go. Once there was a rancher who married for his second wife, the ornatest woman west of the Mississippi. She was meaner than a rattlesnake, and she had two daughters who were spitting images of her. The rancher also had a daughter who was just as sweet and gentle as she could be. Her name was Cindy Ellen. Cindy Ellen was a pretty cowgirl, too. Riding her little gray horse, she wrangled and roped and galloped and looped with the best buckaroos on the range. But as soon as the wedding was over, the sneaky old stepmother began to pick on poor Cindy Ellen. She was so good, she made her stepsisters look bad. So her stepmother made her do all the dirty work around the ranch. "Mend those fences, tend those cows," she would yell, "and shovel out that charcoal." The stepsisters never did a lick of work all day, but Cindy Ellen didn't dare complain to her daddy because his new wife wore the pants in the family. When her chores were done, the poor girl used to sit down and rest among the ashes and cinders at the edge of the fireplace, so her stepsisters nicknamed her Cinderbottom. The younger sister called her Cinderella. But underneath her dirty old clothes, Cindy Ellen was as pretty as a peach. Then one day, the biggest cattle king for miles around invited his neighbors to a 2-day celebration. First, a wild and woolly rodeo, then a square dance and a real western fandango. Cindy's stepsisters puffed up like two turkey gobblers. Even though they couldn't ride, they decided to guzzy themselves up to kill and enter the rodeo. Nice, patient Cindy Ellen ironed her flurry shirts and frizzled her hair to them. "Don't you wish you could go too, Cinderbottom?" sneered her older sister. "Aw, you're just poking fun at me," said Cindy sadly. "You're right," laughed the younger sister. "Nobody can tell you from a cloud of dust, Cinderella." As soon as they were gone, poor Cindy Ellen broke down and cried. Then suddenly she heard a noise outside, almost like gunfire, but not quite. It wasn't bang bang, it was more like bing bing. And there stood a little old lady with a golden pistol, still smoking in her hand. "Who are you?" gasped Cindy Ellen. "Say hello to your fairy godmother, Sugarfoot," the old lady said. She twirled the pistol, slapped it back into her holster, and took a good hard look at Cindy. "What's the matter with you, honey? You're down and dirty as a flop-eared hound dog. Stand up straight, dust yourself off." "I want to go to the rodeo," sobbed Cindy Ellen. "Can you help me?" "Maybe yes, maybe no," said her fairy godmother. "Magic is plumb worthless without gumption. What you need first, gal, is some gravel in your gizzard. Grit, guts. Stop that tomfool blubbering and let's get busy. Time's a-wastin'." She reached for her golden 6-gun and Cindy yelled, "Don't shoot!" But the godmother had already fired, straight up in the air. Bing, ping! Glittery sparkles floated down from the sky and sprinkled Cindy all over with fairy dust. Instantly, her heart filled with strength and happiness, and her rags turned into the finest riding clothes of the East. A creamy white Stetson had crowned her shining hair, golden buckskin chaps encircled her legs, and a pretty little pair of cowboy boots hugged her feet like gloves. Buckled to the heel of each boot was a spur that shot out rays of fiery light. Those spurs were set with diamonds as big as sugar lumps. "Now," said the fairy godmother briskly, "where is that horse of yours?" She fired her magic pistol into the air. Zing! And Cindy's little gray horse became a little silver horse with softly sparkling coat. His hooves glittered as he pawed the ground. "Hit the trail, honey," the old lady said. "Remember, there ain't no horse that can't be rode, and there ain't no man that can't be throwed. And one more thing, get home by midnight, gal, or you'll be sorry." When Cindy Ellen pulled up at the rodeo, everybody turned and stared at the dazzling stranger on the silver horse. The rich rancher's son, a rodeo champion by the name of Joe Prince, came forward wearing the biggest belt buckle you ever saw and swept his hat off his head. "Pleased to meet you, ma'am," he said. "Likewise," said Cindy. Just then, Cindy's older stepsister rode a bucking bronco into the arena, and before she could say "oopsie daisy," the crowd wrinkled its spine, boiled over, and sent her chasing clouds up way into the sky. Then she bit the dust. Next came the second stepsister, but she couldn't ride a rail fence in a stiff breeze, and pretty soon she was eating gravel just like her sister. Cindy Ellen helped her stepsisters up and brushed them off, but they never even recognized her. Then she remembered her godmother's gift of gumption, and she gave Joe Prince a big daredevil grin. "My turn," said Cindy Ellen. Cindy Ellen climbed aboard the salty bronc with a belly full of bed springs, a real rip snorter. She touched him with her diamond spurs. At first he tried a crow hop, then he cat-backed, then he sunfished, and he windmilled, and he jackknifed, but Cindy stuck to her saddle like a postage stamp. "Ride him, cowgirl," cried the crowd, and Cindy Ellen was the winner with every curl in place. Next, with a figure eight, a butterfly, and a wedding ring, she won the trick roping events. Then she and her little horse really burned the breeze. They kicked off the jackrabbits right off the trail. They left their shadows 20 miles behind them, and they won the horse race. They even beat Joe Prince, but Joe didn't seem to care. He rode herd on Cindy Ellen right up to the 11:15 at night, then when she suddenly recalled her godmother's warning and went home galloping. By the time she got there, her fine duds had shriveled into sorry rags again, but she still had her plenty of gumption. After a while, her stepsisters hobbled in, all stove up from the rodeo. "Ha ha, you missed the championship, cowgirl," her older sister jeered. "Nobody knows her name or where she disappeared to." "And old Joe Prince is eating his heart out," said the younger one. "I bet she comes to the square dance tomorrow night," said Cindy, in her daredevil grin. The next evening, her stepsisters got all dressed up like a sore thumb and strutted away to the dance, leaving Cindy Ellen all alone, but not for long. "What's that?" she said, peeking out the window. It looked like a cross between a comet and a dust storm. It sounded like silver bells mixed with dynamite. "Let's get crackin', sweet pea," shouted the fairy godmother. "You're late. Rustle me up the biggest, dustiest, lumpiest squash you can find." And zingo! The squash became a stagecoach. Next, with a check-the-line trap, said her godmother. Quick as a wink, she turned 6 cactus mice into galloped horses, a fat pack into a stagecoach driver, and a rough, tough horned toad into a stagecoach guard, riding shotgun beside the driver. "But what about my ugly old clothes?" asked Cindy. The old lady answered with a blast of fairy dust and melted into a dress that shone like the sun, the moon, and the stars all together. The skirt floated over their petticoats as soft as puffy as summer clouds. A rainbow of jewels glowed around Cindy Ellen's neck, and the little diamond spurs sparkled once more upon her boot heels. "Thank you, ma'am," she cried. The fairy godmother blew smoke from her pistol, holstered it, and dusted off her hands. "Remember, Miss Cindy, pretty is as pretty does," she said. "Magic can backfire, midnight or bust." Cindy promised as the stagecoach rumbled away. When Cindy Ellen arrived at the Cattle King's square dance, the fiddlers were turning up the toe-tapping jamboree. Joe Prince reached for Cindy's hand the instant he laid eyes on her. "Buckle on your partners, folks," he called, "and tell 'em to hang on. Let's shake your hooves like lightning until the early dawn." And Cindy answered, "Hurry up, cowboy. Don't be slow." Left and right and do-si-do, hand over hand and heel over heel, Joe and Cindy danced the daisy chain, the whirl-away, the curly-cue, the grand sachet. They made their feet go wickety-whack. "Swing 'em, boys," cried Cindy, "and do it right." And Joe called back, "Swing 'em, girls, till the middle of the night." Twirling, swirling, Cindy Ellen lost track of time until all at once she heard the clock begin to strike 12. She hightailed it out of there lickety-split. "Whoa!" yelled Joe, hot on her heels, but he couldn't catch her. Off the diamond spurs fell off Cindy's boots as she ran, though Joe picked up one carefully and took it out of the dust. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, not a particle remained of Cindy's gorgeous outfit except for the second diamond spur, which was tucked away in her hip pocket. Pretty soon, word got out of the champion cowgirl was a wanted woman. She left Joe Prince so lovelorn that he was tracking her throughout the territory, and he vowed to marry the horsewoman whose boot fitted the little diamond spur. He tried it on many a foot, but not one could wear it. At last, he came riding up to Cindy's father's place. "Go shovel out the stable," hissed the stepmother, and Cindy reluctantly obeyed. First, Joe tried the diamond spur on the younger stepsister, but no matter how much he stretched his straps, her hoof was too big. The older sister had crushed her feet into the little bitty boot, so just for an instant the spur almost fitted. But then her boot slipped off, and her toes popped out like puppies from a basket, and Joe Prince muttered, "Sorry," and he headed for the door. Wingo, wango, kazing, let her rip, shouted Cindy Ellen's fairy godmother, brandishing her golden pistol. Hold your fire, yelled Joe Prince. But glistening sparks of fairy dust were already sprinkling down everywhere. They turned Cindy's clothes from cotton to satin, and they put quite a twinkle in Joe's eye. And Cindy's horse began to sparkle. Yee-haw, yelled the fairy godmother. So Cindy Ellen and Joe Prince got hitched and lived happily ever after on the ranch full of love and rodeo trophies. Cindy's family moved to town where both stepsisters married city slickers, and Cindy's little horse kept his sparkling coat and his glittering hoofs till the end of his days. Okay, boys and girls, that was Cindy Ellen, the fractured fairy tale of Cinderella. I hope you noticed the setting of the story, which is the time, place, and environment that the story takes place. Bye-bye.